Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Travis, as you all know me as the Calm Scribe, and I am being joined with my fellow co-host, LJ Stanton, for the After the Roll Legend of Vox Machina breakdown, Season 1, Episode 10, Depths of Deceit. How are you tonight, LJ?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Very excited to be able to talk about this and complain.
Well, welcome back from your side quest.
disappointed. Disappointed that I did not come back from my side quest glowing and with ridiculously overpowered magic.
I was just going to
Like
say,
someone did.
you didn't come back as powerful as Pike did when Pike came
No.
back from their side quest. But, I mean, we don't know. You could have some powers that are yet to be revealed in the next couple of episodes. If we're doing
One
a better
can only
job of
hope.
pacing.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone. This is where we break down After the Roll, The Legend of Vox Machina, and we do have a warning. This is mature themes discussed by immature people. You know that already if you've been watching us. The thing with this, though, is this episode, I don't think it's going to be as gritty as the past couple of episodes have been. I could be proven wrong. We haven't compared notes. I have notes. I know LJ has notes. However, just as a reminder, everyone, we said this at the end of the last episode, and that is, if we're saying things that appear to be critical of the show, you need to take it with a grain of salt. For the issue being is that Vox Machina is a fantastic show. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's really well done from start to finish. It's great. The first 6 episodes were immaculately done, and then there's been some ball drops and issues since the final other episodes we've seen up to this point. However, like I said at the last episode, it's kind of like a classical concert. If you play the cello or the violin and you're sitting in a concert hall listening to your favorite classical musicians perform, Bach or Beethoven or something, you are going to pick up on the missed notes, the drop beats, all these other things, because you're intimately familiar with how those instruments work. For us, we're writers, we're watching the show, we watch it for entertainment the first time through, we watch it through a second time, to have that critical eye, to look for the drop beats, to look for the missed things. And so while the things that we're picking up, unless you're really involved in literary worlds, you may not even notice these things. So while it may seem at some points like we're being hypercritical, we're not trying to be hypercritical. We're not trying to say don't watch the show. We're just giving you a really deep, in-depth breakdown of how this show works and what our thoughts and perspectives are from it. And as always, these are our thoughts and perspectives and not shared by any affiliate I don't know. They're our thoughts.
Yeah. TLDR. Go watch the show, make your own opinions, but these are our rather informed ones.
Yeah.
So
and they're fun. And it is a fantastic show. Like, for all the stuff that's there, it's really fantastic.
given that it all started out as a D&D campaign, you can still see those roots, but it's very much it's a lot of hard work making a campaign into an actual cohesive show. Yeah. So it does pretty well given the constraints of a campaign, and the dice rolls don't really care about your narrative.
And that's the tricky thing, and that's the interesting thing with this, is there are points where you can't see, like, oh, that was obviously a poorly rolled, like a poor dice throw that came out. But it does seem more and more as the season progressed that they seem to have taken more liberty away from the table talking. Now, I can't say for sure and Billy's not here. I didn't watch the campaign all the way through like Billy did. But to me, it seems like there's some situations where they may have taken some other liberties and not just stuck to the rule of what happened on the tabletop. And if anyone out there in Chatland knows, let me know. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. And if anyone has questions or comments, this is not like the podcast. You can talk. We are looking at chat.
We will answer.
We will answer you. Yes. We're not snooty and ignoring people for this one. So.
Yeah, no. I'm not being the pedantic scribe right now. I'm just being pedantic.
There we go. All right, so this episode 10, Depths of Deceit, I was excited for this one. The end of the last one kind of gave me some new, fresh hope. And I have to say that this one, I did like this episode better than I have some of the other episodes that were leading up to it. We're going back to some of the better writing, some of the better concepts that they had going on. And they didn't seem to break as far away from tradition as they have in the past.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So we start off the cold open, which is a really nice, and I think it's the first time that they've actually ended on a scene and started the cold open on the same scene for this series.
Yeah.
And that is a gun pointed in the face of the Dr. Ripley. Which I'm assuming that is a reference to aliens, but I'm not going to go there.
I assume so, because that's exactly the first thing I thought of was the like, oh, this is an homage to aliens. But even if it was an unintentional one, it still sits there.
But apparently there's a lot of things they did, like hidden Easter eggs and homages and stuff like that throughout. So I'm going to say it is.
I'm not surprised. But yeah, no, it was, I liked that. And I did like that continuity of they left it on a cliffhanger. So just picking up again right where it left off felt just really nice continuity wise, being able to just hit the ground running with it.
Yeah.
And
really
then I think it goes straight into a flashback.
Yeah, there's a flash. A rather gruesome. Like, that's one of the more, I think, things that they've done in the show where, because there's obviously blood and guts and stuff like that happen, but that's, I think just the way they did it, the imagery, what was happening, and how the fact that, because they've done so many quick cuts and stuff like that in the past, that they stayed close up on the hook through the chest and the neck being pulled out by the hook. And this torture scene was just beautifully executed and really, I think, had the impact that they were going for.
Definitely, because you never see like Percy without his shirt on or with anything less than being dressed kind of to the nines. So it's really interesting to know that it's like, oh, intellectually you already knew that he'd had to have been tortured because of, you know, the things that they've already previously shown us, but having it shown blatantly on screen was very much the like, oh yeah, he has a lot of traumas going on here and some really horrifying ones. Also, pro tip side note, torture is an extremely ineffective way to actually find out information. You are much better to love bomb someone into telling you the information you would like to know.
Yep, Stockholm syndrome the hell out of them until they want to open up and tell you everything.
Exactly. Kill them with kindness.
Exactly. Torture, you're going to get whatever they think you want to hear.
Exactly.
That's why I stopped torturing people, because it just was so ineffective. And while it was fun, it was a waste of time.
Yeah, you know, it's good for confirming things that you already know potentially, but it's really not good for new information. Yeah.
Now, I did have an issue with this torture scene. Believe it or not, as beautifully executed as it was, I did have an issue with it.
With the meat hook?
No, I thought the meat hook was great. Like, I loved all of that, and then that whole neck thing was like really just cherry on the on the cake. However, Silas is there, and all Silas needs to do is look at someone in the eye and say, "Tell me the information I need. Lead me to where I want to go," and they do it.
Yep.
So apart from just for the fun of torturing people, and maybe that's all it was, them just being evil and torturing and stuff like that, it seemed really excessive and unnecessary to torture someone to get information that you could just, like, with a literally blink of an eye, mind trip them into telling you.
That is a recurring issue that I have in general, is I feel like at the start of the show, they had a fairly reasonably good kind of handle on the magic systems that they had created and that they were working with. At this point, I feel like there's too much power all sitting together and not enough of it being used effectively. So Silas is incredibly OP. Being able to just look at anyone and just be like, tell me what I want to know. Thank you. Is insanely powerful. And there's no reason, we're given no reason for why he can't just do that to Percy. So it is very frustrating, especially since later on in the episode, you can see that he does it to multiple people at a time. So it's even if for some reason, like, Percy is really a strong-willed human being, if Silas can do it to multiple people, surely he could break one person without torture.
Especially a child.
So, especially, like, Percy was a kid at the time. So it doesn't jive well, especially given that, you know, it seems like it has been a while since, you know, he came back from the dead. So it's not like he's just discovered that, oh, hey, dude, did you know I can mind control people now? Holy shit.
Yeah.
Or if he hadn't known at that point, like, that needed to be explained better. Because as it is, yeah, you're just sitting there being like, why didn't you just collect the information or just verify that no, Percy has no idea, have fun, do what you want with him.
Yeah, just do your thing. Because that's the thing, though, is that I find, and I could be mistaken in this, but it really seems like, looking back, most of the missteps that we're seeing, or the miscues, or the slightly off stuff, seems to be in stuff that didn't occur during the tabletop. Like this, I'm almost guaranteed this opening scene, this cold open with the torture, because that's what Matt Mercer was saying they're really excited about, is being able to show the back scene machinations of the villains and all this other stuff. And so this torture scene seems like it was one of those things, like, it wasn't a part of the tabletop game. And as we're writing it, like, this would be a really cool scene to write out. And it was a fantastic scene. I loved it. I loved the fact that they have it in there. Like I said, I'm being very semantic and getting into it and being like, you know,
it would have been better even if it had just been Delilah there, you know, because then it would have been more conceivable of Silas is busy doing other important shit and therefore can't be here to interrogate the prisoner. Little things like that are really important, though, to keep in mind. Just as a writer, you know, having those continuity and knowing where your power levels are at. And some of this for me comes just from playing video games and whatnot. And even things like, you know, my husband plays Magic and those kinds of things where it's, you know, you need to know how things scale up, because otherwise you just end up with things that are just like, this is too powerful. You haven't shown me how many uses it can have, how it affects him, any of these kinds of things to make it believable that he is being choosy about when he's going to be using this power. Yeah. So, yeah. That's
it. But again, a gorgeous scene. And then it does go to this gunshot to black. We hear Keyleth say, Percy, wait. And then we find out that Cass has knocked the gun aside. The bullet went astray. And then in his darkened, smoky form, Percy explains to us who Dr. Ripley is and why she needs to die at his hands.
Yep.
And that was and then Ripley pulls on Percy. She tries to manipulate Percy, like you said, kill him with kindness. She tries to manipulate Percy with the intelligence, like, you're an intelligent person, you're smarter than this, like, why don't we work together? And she really has this like manipulation thing that she's trying to go through, which Percy doesn't really go for at first.
Not particularly successful. One of the things that did also irritate me just about that scene in general too, when she became free and, you know, she said she'd help them, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. And then does I need my bag that's right across from her cell with her things and her inventions and those kinds of things. And I'm just like, if you're going to imprison someone, you don't just leave all of their shit on a hook in front of them in case they escape.
Yep. Well, and
it's just, none of the villains have come across as like genuinely stupid at any point. So it always frustrates me when you have intelligent villains and really dumb things that just happen to move the plot along. It's this doesn't make sense why this is here.
There is a couple in this episode that stuck out to me as well. I've got that as a note, as being like, why is her bag right there? And I've got questions about the bag as well. It's going to come up in a moment. But the other thing that bothered me about this is, and they make reference to this, and they've clearly pointed out several times, that she is missing a hand.
Yeah.
And then they tie her hands together.
Yeah.
And if you've got someone who's like this, tied together, all they have to do is go like this. And they're like, what is the efficacy of tying someone?
Well, there's still a lot of range of motion that you can do, even if you were somehow one-handed bound. Like, if you've been living with one hand for long enough, you make accommodations yourself of how to deal with it. You learn how to stretch your body, how to use your hand, all of those things. That it's like, tying the one-handed lady with her hand in front of her is just dumb. This isn't stopping her from doing anything.
Well, it should have been the one hand tied to her belt behind her back.
Exactly.
Because all she has to do is pull the stump out.
Do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like she really can just slide the stump out, and then like you cannot tie two things together that don't have two blocks at the end.
Yeah.
it just
Yeah. It was not
thing.
thought out.
Yeah. But that one stood out to me at the very beginning. And the first time I watched it, I was like,
what is the point?
Okay. So,
I also took a bit of an issue with the fact that, Cassandra pushes the gun away and does you can't shoot her, like you can't do these things. And yes, she almost died previously to this episode, but I really disliked how quickly everything was just like, she's a D-roller, she's cool, she's one of us. And it's like, dude, she lived with the Briarwoods for an indeterminate amount of time and was cared for. Do not trust this woman. And it was just driving me nuts the entire episode of the why does she get a vote? Why does she get any of these things? Because this doesn't make sense at all. Why? Like, I get that she's your sister, but there's also Vex is usually smarter than this, and the rest of the team is usually smarter than this to be more of the okay, well, maybe we shouldn't trust without verifying, and maybe keep a better eye on her too. It was just very...
That was problematic. And the other thing too that bothered me is about this, and I'm not going to get into it fully now because it is definitely going to come up at the end more fully.
Yeah.
But as a bit of a teaser to it being is Ripley worked for the Briarwoods. Cass was under their dominion, or they were taking care of her as she for the past however many years. Cass and Ripley know each other. Cass was tortured by Ripley and was like, no, don't kill her, it's cool. And the other thing too is that they both know who each other are and what each other are about.
Yeah.
And there's no recognition. Not even a moment of oh yeah, I know who you are. And it was just there was nothing. It was just two blank slates facing off against each other. And they have been connected, as we'll discuss later on. They have been connected, and that really bothered me because I was like, there was no there's some ways maybe we can stretch and explain it away, which we will in a little bit. But that was one of those things that stuck out to me where I was like, Cass should have had some sort of recognition. It should have been, if anyone else, to knock the gun away.
I was expecting literally anybody else to have done it. Okay, maybe not. I was expecting Vex to have done it, or Vax, one of them to have done it. Grog never would have done it in a million years. He's too bloodthirsty and would have just found it funny to have this lady get shot. And Scanlan was too short, basically. So he's not doing anything.
So his glowworm is too short.
Yes. Yep.
But they have this thing where Ripley is pulling on his knowledge, and they agree not to kill her right away. But then Scanlan is like, hey, buddy, let's have a sidebar. This whole Smokey thing is getting a hell of a lot worse. Do you want to kind of explain this?
Yeah.
And then Pike does a divination to see what's going on, and we realize that there's something clouding Percy's soul, and there's a lot more involved than we initially may have thought. I mean, the way this is playing out is kind of exactly the way I imagined it playing out.
Yeah.
I figured this what this was.
Yeah. It's very much they are showing now the personification of whatever agreement he has gotten himself into about this gun. And he's in trouble. He's in a lot of trouble. I did like his sarcasm though, and his irritation at the idea of let's go to I have to get you to a temple, because it was very much him doing me let's just totally abandon everything we're doing here to go run back to a temple to deal with me.
Yeah.
And it's priorities. You finish what you started, get this shit dealt with, and then take him to a temple to get fixed.
Let's put the fire out before we deal with my paper cup.
Exactly.
But that scene I found worked really well and was kind of together. And then I've got
it was really pretty. It was really well animated. Yeah. I quite liked it. I loved the smile of the demon or whatever it is that has Percy. Just
and I like the fact that we're slowly trickling out what this thing is, and that's something that I like. That I'm actually really impressed and really shocked that they've gone this far, and I'm assuming even further. Yeah. Before we truly find out what is happening with this, it's not often you get an entity, a being, a bad person, a thing, or whatever you want to call the smoke thing that's there, that doesn't get revealed, and there's only 3 episodes left. Like, there's still no revelation of what this thing is. They've kept this thing, done a really good job of tantalizing us all the way along with this. And just when you're like, oh, we're going to get the divination, oh, there's something blocking his... Thanks, Pike. Go blow in a tree somewhere.
Yeah. And I really do like that change because, of course, like at the very beginning, we talked about, I remember the fact that Percy didn't get much, you know, the first like couple of episodes, it's very much, you know, the first 2 episodes, I should say, I think it is, that Percy's just kind of in the background anyways. Like, he's a member of Vox Machina, but he's not the most important member. He's just the, you know, well-dressed, snooty one. Yeah. And it's really cool to now go from this character that basically was background noise to the rest of them to now being front and center and having something demonically wrong with him or something along those lines, something black and awful that the temple needs to get rid of. So I'm leaning. Yes.
That was the cool thing I really liked when it like reached, and like they did so many beautiful cutscenes in this episode.
Yes.
The gunshot from the opening to this, like all of the cutscenes are gorgeous.
Yes. And yeah, it was beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Yeah. Most definitely. But then they start to interrogate Ripley, and she says that they needed an engineer. I needed someone to fund my experiments. So it was purely a give and take kind of thing. Like, both of us in each were filling each other's needs. My immediate thing to that is always, that's a trope that we always see that comes up, and it's like, you know, bullshit.
Yeah. And especially given that, like, you get the flashback from Percy of her torturing him, of her hunting them down, of her being an active participant in the murder of their parents. And it's like, don't give me this bullshit about only being an engineer. Like, and I don't know whether that's a case of like her trying to explain away what she's done, if it's a way of compartmentalizing and doing I just did this. I was only in it for the science. And if it's that deep on a character level, or if this is an issue of the writing and the animators and whatnot didn't get all on the same storyboard.
Well, it seemed to me kind of like it was just almost the typical trope of wheedling for their life, of like, well, no, I wasn't, I just was doing this. Like, I'm not as bad as you think I am. They all deserve to die. I don't. Because of these reasons. I shouldn't die. You should kill everybody else. I
do love when Percy just does you are the luckiest person in Whitestone tonight because you're at the bottom of my list. And it's just ooh, beautiful.
Yeah, that's something that was, again, like that, the tiff between the two of them back and forth, I found was pretty well played out for this. But, you know, she said that, and then she said that she tried to leave, and the Briarwoods trapped her and like forced her to stay, and they threw her away and threw her in prison and locked away the key, tossed away the key and that kind of stuff. But again, it seemed to me very just like, you're like everyone else is just trying to save your own skin. You can't be trusted. Like, I never trusted her all the way through this thing. It didn't make any sense.
Well, and what in some ways doesn't make sense to me is, again, it's like, you have a vampire. Why doesn't he just eat? Like, why don't you just eat the problematic, annoying people? Why do you store them? I mean,
So yeah, there's questions that definitely come up. And she has this thing of, you know, he says, you know, I'm going to kill you. Like, what stops me from killing you and going and killing them? And she's like, well, they're not in the throne room. They're in the ziggurat.
Yeah.
I love that. That's one thing I found that they did really well, is they have started to flash back to poignant scenes in other episodes, and now they're bringing them up and tying up loose ends.
Yeah.
So we have
the zipper
Stanton
twat
jumping up the zipper twat. Like, that's what that is.
Yeah. Also, that's just terrifying as a concept. Kind of just makes me cringe.
I said that to my wife earlier. She's like, "What? What? No!" I'm like, "Okay, it's a thing. It's a ziggurat."
Yeah. No. It's. Yeah. No. But, my whole uterus area just cringes every time they say it, because it's just like, no. Yeah,
my wife has...
And now it's time to point down to the that side, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The
down
warning.
here, the warning.
Immature themes. Or immature people and mature themes.
Going very immature and very mature theme for a moment. My wife has a friend who, whenever something happens that is like a complete turn off or something really disgusting or really whatever, that something like zipper twat, her reaction to it is just go.
Yep. That. I'm gonna have to steal that because that is exactly what it is. Just everything clenches up and it's just nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Away from that. But then Keyleth
Green
also brings
Giant
back the.
is slightly confused apparently, and we're talking about vaginas and twats since
Green Giant,
zipper
yes.
that is a euphemism. So zipper twat is talking about teeth and vaginas, and that just
So in a previous episode, they find the book. For those of you who haven't joined us previously, in a previous episode, they stole this book from the real salties. They stole this book from the Briarwoods, and Scanlan is trying to translate it, and as he's translating, he's like, it's all about something to do with the zipper twat. And then that's when Keyleth looks over and goes, no, that's ziggurat. It's a ziggurat, and that's this place where we can bring in people from other dimensions and stuff like that. So that came back up, as did Keyleth, where she was like, oh, like the ziggurat is down below. That's the dark energy that I found in the roots of the sun tree that must be connected. So again, they're taking loose threads and they're starting to wind them together, which really was a sigh of relief for me to see that they're actually because it kind of went broad for a while, episode 7, 6, 7, 8, and now it's starting to come back and focus to where it needed to be.
And it is nice to see that, like things are paying off. Those little moments, you get everything threaded back together nicely, and it's, very handy, which is just awesome.
Yes.
So.
And no, Salties. LJ is not streaming. It's just myself streaming. Yep.
So.
But you can follow.
Yeah.
No, not at all. We're allowed to ask questions, but ask questions. We'll chat and stuff like that. But I was going to say, follow if you're not already following. That's something that should be. I should put that across the bottom, actually. I follow my co-host here.
At some point.
Future note.
Not a big deal.
For myself. Just forgot our Twitch name. LJ Stanton.
I'm really simple. I keep all of my author accounts all the same. So I'm just LJ Stanton author or LJ Stanton across all of my accounts, whether it's Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, just everything.
Just how I am the Calm Scribe across everything.
Yeah.
So if you're on any social media and you're like, oh, is Travis on this form of social media? Type in the Calm Scribe and I will probably pop up. I will pop up if I'm a part of it.
Exactly.
Well, that reminds me of something I wanted to check on, but I forgot what that was. Anyways, no, there was something someone was talking about on social media today that I thought I saw some new social media thing being mentioned. But we're going to get into that social media news also after we're done talking about Legend of Vox Machina, because that's something happened today, Chad. I'm sure you've heard about that's going to have massive ramifications. I don't know good or bad or what's going to happen, but we'll get into that after the show.
Yep.
So anyways, that was another part too, where there was a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. And that was something that we had a bit of foreshadowing here, where we have Dr. Riley or Dr. Ripley, who is saying like, you know what, listen, you're smarter than this. I can help you. Let's work together. We can work through this. And there's one phrase that never comes out of her mouth at all. And we hear that phrase come out of Cassandra's mouth, which is, Percy says, I don't trust her. And then Cassandra says, then trust me.
And no.
If anyone ever is just like out of the blue, but like, oh, no, trust me. Like, no. No.
Just no. Don't trust the woman that has like Stockholm syndrome and is helping lead you down towards the ziggurat. Like, this is all just guys, you are supposed to be smart. Everyone but Grog is supposed to be smarter than this. And even Grog, I thought,
has his moments.
Would have asked a question or two about this.
Yeah. But to be fair, Percy is kind of insane in the murder hobo rampage at the moment. And all the rest of the team, I think, is kind of like, if we think about what has just transpired over the past 10 minutes, the rest of the team is kind of rocked on the heels and it's like, holy shit, what is going on right now? And why? Like, Percy is still smoking. Like Percy is a smoking gun. And like,
yes,
what is happening?
Quite literally.
Yeah. So I think that's like, we have to take into account too the tension and the scenario and the circumstances behind everything. But yeah, if anyone in life says trust me, don't trust them. You shouldn't have to say trust me for someone to trust
if you're an actually trustworthy person, that will just come naturally, that people will trust you because you've made good judgments. You have proven the fact that you can be trustworthy. If you have to say, no, we're good, trust me, I know this. No, you probably don't know it. And if anybody says it to you, don't trust them at all.
And we're both writers, so you can trust us on this.
Yeah.
Trust us. But then we have Ripley's bag is there, and they empty it out. They take stuff out, and there's the gun. So when I first go through of this, I was like, Percy had a gun blow up, and we never really saw what happened with it. I don't know if it went back into the bag of everything or where this gun went. And I was like, is that a gun that Percy had, and that's a sign that she was actually just jailed rather recently, and she was able to find this blown out gun that Percy had somewhere? Or is this something? Then on my second time going through, I was like, oh, is this actually something that she created? Because then she starts asking him questions, being like, how do your barrels roll and do this and that? And so it seemed like that was almost like a reunification of the, yes, we're both on the same level, we're both intelligent, look, I've been trying to build a gun too.
I think that it's the latter, because my impression was with it exploding is that maybe that was how she lost her hand, was through experimenting with these pepper boxes and not getting it right.
Because she does say mixing magic and something, I've got it in my notes, mixing magic and science is always dangerous.
Yeah. And that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah. So I think
I'm wondering if that was it blew up in her face and it took her hand.
That could also be the point that she became useless to the Briarwoods, and they're like, you know what? Just take your stuff. Here's your bag. Be gone. Rot in jail.
Yeah. Which again, dispose of the bag then, or eat her.
Like, do they? That's the other question I had. Like, this place is so dusty and old, and obviously it's a dungeon. They don't really go through and pay the cleaning crew that well. But do you think the Briarwoods actually pay someone or have someone on staff to go down and feed the one prisoner in this rattling around in their dungeon?
I mean, they have to, because otherwise in like 3 days she'd be dead from dehydration. So, and she looks pretty plump. So I'm thinking she must be getting at least watered, if not watered and fed. It
just seems strange that they would do that, to me at least. Like, it seems kind of out of character.
Yeah.
Unless they were trying to keep her as a blood sacrifice for something, or keep her as a foil for something else down the road.
Yeah, if something went wrong and they needed to pick her brain, but it just seems strange.
Yeah.
And I want to know again more of the what happened, by virtue of the fact that like they kept all of their other lieutenants in great form. That what actually happened between her and the Briarwoods to make it so that she got thrown in the dungeon instead of getting a gorgeous manor to live in. Yeah.
Well, there is that, yeah. So there's a lot of questions I think that may get played out down the road in other seasons and stuff, because like Billy said, there's a lot more that's involved in this. And I actually almost bought the backstory of Vox Machina Volume 1 and Volume 2 the other day when I was at the store.
Oh.
It would have cost me $60 though. So I was like, not right now.
A little much.
But especially because they're only like a centimeter thick.
Oh, man.
They're not very thick. They're like, there's graphic novels at Chapters Indigo, and they're not very thick. But at any rate, Percy dumps out all the stuff and says, let's get out of here. And then we have, perhaps, to me at least, the most confusing and pointless cutscene of the entire series. It cuts to the Pale Guard and standing on the bridge going into the castle, Whitestone Castle, and we see the townsfolk, and they've got their glowing implements, and they're
glowing bullshit weapons. Like that is just Pike is so overpowered at this point that it's just completely stupid.
They took her from here, made her disappear, and then brought her to here, and it was a thing. But they've got these weapons that glow and are superpowered by the Dawnfather, and then they run in. They're like, we're going to take over. And they run in this, like, begin this massive thing. And it cuts before they get together. And it never goes back to them.
Yeah.
Like, never again.
And the thing with me that I find so very frustrating is that peasant rebellions can sometimes work. But if you have presumably well-trained soldiers with decent armor and decent weapons holding a formation versus
on a bridge,
peasants just on a bridge, so there's no getting around them to flank, but you could be, because you are a bunch of haphazard peasants, you can be flanked. Why? I don't care that they have glowy weapons. They shouldn't be able to win this.
Yeah. And
they're going to, because they're the good guys, and good guys always win for some obnoxious reason. But yeah, it is very frustrating when it's peasant rebellions are won through guerrilla warfare. Like if you look at Afghanistan and its history with invasions, that regardless of whether you like the defenders or not, they always hold out and they always end up winning because they know the land, they know the towns, they know these places, and they can draw people to areas that they control and can kill them. And that's how this should work, is drawing out the army and guerrilla warfare, not this we meet them on the battlefields and we'll be victorious because the glowing disembodied dwarf decided to give us glowy weapons that are magic, and therefore we are invincible because we're good guys. And yeah.
Well, and that's
never cheering for the good guys.
No, they can. Farmers with a pitchfork and a bow staff and stuff like that can be, when they're defending, can be very strong, can be very powerful. But as the U.S. learned very strongly, because there's one war in history that changed warfare for North America, the concept of it massively, and that was the Vietnam War. And the Viet Cong had a saying of, you don't fight the tiger in its own jungle. Because in typical warfare, the two sides would line up. You own this land and what's behind you. They own this land and what's behind them. And then you try to push each other back and forth to get their land. Whereas if you're doing guerrilla warfare, if you're doing jungle warfare, if you're fighting the tiger in its own jungle, you don't own the land that you're standing on. Because you've got 6 people hidden that are going to take you out that you don't see. And that changed the face of warfare as Europeans and North Americans really understood it back in the day. And that's something that is this kind of thing here. It's like, it definitely would have been send in a few people to rankle up the guard and get them moving, get them chasing, and then flush in from the sides. And maybe they had something, but it looked like they had almost all their forces running in at the same time.
Yeah, it was disappointing, and it also just slowed the pace down. Like, I had honestly almost forgotten that this scene happened because it was so unimportant to the rest of the story.
And it doesn't tie in, like, I don't know if it ties in for the rest of the, like in the last 2 episodes, but in this episode, there was 0 tiebacks. Like, they don't go back to it, they don't reference it again, they don't whatever, it's just nothing is there. But then we do cut back, and it cuts, it's where we start seeing some of our regular people having fun again and going back to their own self, where we see Scanlan trying it all with Cass. Being like, so, how you doing? And Percy like, no.
Yeah. And it was just, it was so Scanlan, but it was also like, dude, not the time. Not the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, not the place either. So.
Yeah, most definitely.
But
then we do find out more that Ripley has talked about how she found the cigarette, she restored it, and she's improved it. And she said she's augmented the structure with, and that's where Percy comes in and says, with residuum. And she's like, for what reason, we don't know. And then
magic reasons.
Yeah. And she's like, they start digging through tunnels and going deeper and deeper under the castle.
Before that, though, they end up in the tomb, which was another pretty useless scene.
That comes after this, though.
Is it after?
Yeah, because I've got notes on it where I'm like, what?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's notes that I almost brought up last episode that really bothered me about the tomb scene.
Oh.
Because first, they have to go through the hallway to get there first.
Yeah.
So Percy steps in, triggers a trap. All these ninja stars go flying everywhere, which is kind of out of the blue and cool.
Yeah.
But ninja stars go, like shurikens go flying everywhere and dinging off everything. And then Ripley's like, maybe you should let me lead because I did this and it's working better than I intended it to work.
Yeah.
And then that's where we also...
It's always nice.
Exactly. Death traps are always good when they work better. And then we have Pike and Grog having a cute little conversation where Grog is poking her.
Yeah.
That was a lovely
That was
moment.
pretty adorable when you have the two of them talking about the fact that, like, he's her best friend and he's always known who she is because she's his best friend. And that's just it. And it's just so stinking cute.
Yeah.
Like,
now you glow.
They're just, yeah, now you glow.
I think of all the relationships in the series, that's probably my favorite. The one between Pike and Grog. Because they're so mismatched. They're so whatever. Like, it's just... And they finish each other so well. And it's beautiful. They did a great job with that. All right, see you in a moment, Giant.
Yeah.
But then we have another moment of foreshadowing. They go through that hallway. They're about to go down. And just before they enter around the corner to go down the stairs and they enter into the scene, we see a spider in a cobweb that scurries away. And then they come in and they start walking down the stairs. And it was just a beautiful moment of foreshadowing that they tied in there. Nothing was said. It was just this moment of the spider in the web sneaking away. And it was beautiful. I thought
I appreciated that the entire time you're sitting here going, this is a trap. We all know it's a trap. And they just are oblivious to it. Sorry, as I shake my cam. And it was just, it's really nice that it's not an overt, this is obviously a trap, but it is just you get that feeling, that uncomfortable feeling for the heroes of this is not going to end well. Things are just not good. Yeah. And having little moments like just here, look at the spider, look at the web, is just artfully done so that you don't have to have anything more explicit than that, So yeah, exactly. It was very nice.
Exactly. And then they're going down the stairs towards the family tension, and then there is... Or down to the family tomb. And we have Cassandra taking a jab at Percy, saying that he's got a unique mind, and she's like, that's not a compliment. But then they go down, and then they have another moment. So we have this foreshadowing. We have this build-up. It's been a pretty tense all the way through, except for that little brief moment with Grog and Pike. And that's the thing I found they did pretty well with this episode was pacing. They were able to, they could have done, I think, a better job, but they were able to pull things back a little bit and not pull back the reins too hard. We had that moment where they kind of loosen things, and then we have the spider in the web and coming down the creepy staircase. So a lot of the tension and pacing happened just with the visual effects for this episode, I found. But then we have a beautiful tension breaker with Grog being like, everyone stand back. The stone person is armed.
Yes.
And that shatters the tension and really gives a breath, gives a pause, and then it just goes back into high octane again.
I do want to just talk a little bit about that moment with Cassandra where she does that was not a compliment. And it's very funny to watch that scene, like as a younger sibling, as a younger sister, with a brother who is definitely a Percy style person. He's very much got the intellect and the sharp wit. And seeing Cassandra do the not a compliment when it's been you guys haven't seen each other forever. It's really interesting to see Percy doing oh, it's my little sister. And she's teasing me and giving me a hard time the way she always used to. And he's missing the whole point.
Yeah.
Because she's not teasing him the way that she did when they were little and whatnot. It is a very different bit of body language that they use and tone and all of these things that it hit me really hard, right? Just as I get how much anger is just in this moment because of the way that she went about saying that. It very much was another moment of you should not be cutting her so much slack. You should not be trusting her because she is angry. And she's holding it together really well, but she is angry.
This is one of the points they've done the best job at addressing that. And again, it was subtle, which is a beautiful way of doing it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I loved that moment. So it's for all of my complaints about this episode, that was beautifully done.
Yeah.
Just absolutely beautifully done.
It definitely was. And that brings up one of my questions and issues, is that there's two things that tie into this. One, so they're standing in this tomb, in this crypt, the Durolo family crypt. Generations are there, and they did a really fun, quippy thing with the battling, like Uncle whatever it was, and it was beautifully done. However,
I hated that scene.
I just thought it was a funny thing. Like, again, they added some levity to try to break up the tension, because it's a really kind of a dark and fast moving episode. But
I really wish they hadn't, though.
Just kept
because it going? Because my biggest problem with it is more that the last couple episodes, I think it is, you have zombies as this formidable force that they are struggling to deal with until Pike shows up and just is Pike. And then to just have it be like, nah, it's zombies. We can just like smash them together and everything's fine. It's not a big deal.
See,
it's funny.
I took that
it's not hard.
Critical mass, though, because there was, out in the there was thousands of zombies coming at them, which I have another question about later. And then in this, there's just like a couple of zombies that's like, there's a handful that they have to defeat. They're outnumbered maybe 3 or 4 to 1 rather than 300 to 1. So for me, I saw that too, but I was like, critical mass. I'll let that go.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the things with zombies, is that they are a critical mass thing, but it was still just like, it felt a little like it just kind of defeated how much they had to go through in the previous episode to have it be just so meh.
And they did kind of blow it up with the bone confetti with
Grog.
Whereas like, I laughed. It was a funny scene, but it was like it did break out the thing. But my big question with this is, two big questions are: one, from the previous episode of the Waves of Zombies and being in the family tomb, where are Mom and Dad? Where are the Durillos? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying the Silas and Delilah would necessarily take the time to bury them in the family tomb and take care of them and stuff like that, but if they're going to bring up old dead family members, you'd think they'd have this thing of like, oh, crap, I have to fight my mom and dad. And they didn't. Maybe that's because they're trying to avoid that trope or what it was, but I just was kind of like, okay, well, where are mom and dad? And the other thing that stuck out to me is, what happened? They do this massive spell, all the undead come up out of the graves and start running reckless through the world and through the city, and then the family members are just chilling in their tombs, like hanging out.
Just waited.
Then, oh, you guys are here. Okay, let me make my entrance. Like, how come only the family stood back and chilled? Because it wasn't that they opened they couldn't open the tombs, because they opened one tomb and all the rest were opened by the undead inside. So why did they not come out, get called out when everyone else get called out?
Yeah, and that was definitely a bit of a problem. It's like, I would have really loved it to have been they opened the door and then, the entrance to the tomb, and then it was just oh shit, there's zombies. But yeah. And
they get overwhelmed and the fight, like they could have used that.
Yeah, it could have
tension.
Yeah, there could have been a better dynamic, I think, if they needed to have this fight. I don't think it was necessarily a needed fight to have. But
I think that is something that could have been a tabletop thing, where I can see the DM being like, you go down the stairs, you walk in, and you're in a family tomb. What do you do? Well, we roll.
Yeah.
Like, do you go for the door, do whatever? We roll. Oh, the roll didn't go well. All the tombs open up, and everyone comes crawling out and tries to attack you.
Yeah, that's fair. It reminded me very much of, like, Season 8 Game of Thrones, when they're down in the Stark tomb, and I was just like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay. And okay.
Oh, that's definitely it. And then we have Ripley grabs the sword, and then this another bit of foreshadowing to me. Ripley grabs the sword, and Percy is like, "No, like bad, put it down." And then Ripley says, "I'm not what you should be worried about."
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of tied back to me, where I was like, they know each other.
Yeah.
So to me, that was another bit of foreshadowing. It could have been like, it very well could have been like, no, what you're about to face off against with the Briarwoods is a hell of a lot more dangerous than me holding a sword. But to me, that was kind of like, But if that was the case, and she was anticipating some kind of twist, why wouldn't she warn them? Like, there's so many I don't know. There's so many, the way this
can
was
understand.
done, there's a lot of questions that can come up from it, but I think overall it was handled pretty well.
I can understand her not, just by virtue of doing she's clearly in it for herself. So I think she was waiting. She wasn't going to give them any additional help that didn't completely serve her interests.
Yeah.
Because if she could throw them to the Briarwoods and nope out, that's 100% what she's going to do. That was how I felt when it comes to dealing with Dr. Ripley, is that it was she's going to continue with the vague warnings because maybe you're smart enough to figure it out. Maybe you're not. Well, if you're not smart enough to figure it out, then you're not useful to her.
Yeah, and it also could have been a matter of, if I say anything, make any accusations against anyone in this group, Percy's just going to off me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any
or not believe it
to say anything because it's just going to end poorly if I do, so I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we have Vax and Grog dealing with the door. And that was, I thought they did Vax really well in this. Like, Grog, I thought, like, kind of maybe overplayed a little bit, but I just found Vax being just like, okay, almighty Grog, I'm so weak and useless without you. Beautifully, like...
And it was a good light moment, and I kind of felt like that was enough. You didn't need to have bone confetti happening ahead of time. Having Grog just do I'm gonna make you tell me all these wonderful things about me and all these terrible things about you. So that would have been enough for me, because it was funny, and it was well animated. Just, Vax doing the like, okay, here we go, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah, and Grog with the hand up, just being like, oh yeah, that's right.
Like, that's exactly it.
So Grog throws the door open, and then they move forward, and then we have another really out of the blue thing that kind of caught me off guard. It was funny, where Scanlan's like, we have our evidence, we can just leave and have our day in court, do our thing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, that's really a bizarre thing. Like, talk about a day in court and stuff with a group of rogues and everyone fighting and doing the stuff. It kind of stood out.
Yeah.
Weird, but I like how they wrapped it up, though, with Grog and Scanlan.
God, Keyleth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are we making these comments, Keyleth? Yeah. It did feel like Scanlan's definitely got the heart of I wouldn't say he has the heart of a coward, but he definitely has cowardly habits. So it was very in character for me. Like, I thought for him to be able to be like, maybe we should hold up and not go into this scary cigarette place and have terrible things happen to us potentially. But it did feel a little bit off when he's like, oh, we have all this evidence. And I was like, what evidence do you have? You've got a bunch of people you've killed. You're not dragging Ripley all the way back to court. And the last you saw, the king was enthralled by Silas. So who cares about this anyways? Like,
what
it just was not. Yeah, like, this is not going to be useful. And
which is why Keyleth should never have come up with that idea.
Yeah, God, Keyleth. Such a coward.
But what do I have? Why did the parents not rise? They go in, and then Scanlan runs into the drug horde, and they find this beautifully designed thing, and we find out that it's residuum and acid pipes.
Not a trap.
Yeah, totally not a trap. But it's residuum and acid pipes. As soon as you hear acid pipes, you're like, oh, you need to use... Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great having Scanlan just see white powder and then just be like, yes, we get the drugs. Dude, white stone.
Yeah.
Don't snort it. Though I think it would have honestly been kind of hilarious if Percy had let him.
But I like Percy's thing. Like, that's not going to be the trip you think it is.
Yeah, that's true. So I was kind of doing it would be really funny. I want to know what it would be like to have Scanlan tripping on residuum.
Yeah.
Or residuum.
I don't even know what that would do to you. Like,
I don't know. That's why I want to find out using Scanlan.
But that was the thing. So there's two things that come up with this that bothered me. One is that Ripley is like, because this bothersome bit comes up again later on, which I think is proof. I think it either bothers me or it's really intelligent, because they used intelligence to prove Ripley being a lying bag of crap.
Yeah.
Which is, Ripley says, I know nothing about this place. This is all Anders.
Yeah.
I just did the Residuum and the Ziggurat. Anders. This was all Anders' domain. I know nothing about this. What's going on. And then as they're standing there, this is the other question that I had. As they're standing there, Cass's name appears on the pepper box. Mm-hmm. And then they look up, and very much like the spider in the web, Cass is skittered off to go lay the trap. Now that they've been caught in her trap, and we realize that Cassandra is betraying everybody.
My note here is the curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, because it's very much that moment of like, oh no, the obviously telegraphed betrayal has happened.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Like,
but then that
you guys
brought up the
literally walked into this and deserve it because you're dumb.
Yeah, you're not paying
You're
attention.
dumb.
You're too hyper fixated on killing everyone. But my big thing with this is it's a magic gun. It's got all the names of his enemies and stuff like that on it.
Yeah.
Does he need to know that the person is an enemy? Because it's a magic gun, and why did the name suddenly appear? Because that doesn't even make sense, because he didn't look and see her running off. It was all of a sudden the gun was like, a new enemy. Why was Cassandra's
a new enemy has entered the
sooner?
arena. I honestly wonder if it was something to do with intention, and that it was actions activated of she has now officially done something to cause him harm. Why it does that with like Cassandra and it didn't do that with, like the dragon that was trying to kill them in the first 2 episodes or any of those kinds of things, I don't know. It's a really cool visual moment.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things that it's like, why didn't it appear earlier in the episode when the telegraphing was happening of she's clearly upset. She is either making this decision actively because of the fact that she is upset, or she is making this decision because she has some ingrained Silas Jedi mind control, Sith mind control, I suppose, going on, so that it's that has been triggered. Her sleeper mode has been activated, and now she's going off and doing this, and that's why the pepper box maybe did it.
I don't know. It would have been cool though if they did it earlier. Yeah. Because if all of a sudden the name appeared and have that moment of confusion where Percy's like, the hell? Like, why is this? Yeah. Like, okay.
Why does this want me to kill my sister?
Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that may have been too blatant hit over the head foreshadowing. But I mean, they could have used it for attention and confusion because I found they really, even to this point, except for a few brief shining moments, I think they've really fallen flat on the whole Percy-Cassandra whole thing. Their relationship, their connection, their reconnection, it really has just not been as intriguing, as connecting, and as powerful as it very well could have been.
And I think part of that problem is the fact that all you get to see of Cassandra beforehand is that she's an obnoxious brat or she's being hurt. And those are all that you get of her before you see her with the Briarwoods, before you see her get her throat slit and appear, show up with them. So you don't know anything about her. And the only thing you know about her and Percy is that they didn't get along. And I wouldn't trust my brother if I didn't get along with him and hadn't seen him in however many years, and he showed up after living with an enemy of mine. Like, I just it was not believable to me that it was so, oh my God, you're alive. I've been grieving this so much.
Yeah.
But I mean, grief does very strange things to people. So I will give them a bit of a pass on that. My problem is more with their magic system. Their magic system, I'm okay with some softness to it, some ambiguity, but that power level scaling again is just, it's too much. It's okay, why does the gun know that Cassandra's now an enemy? Is it going to be able to figure out if, like, is Dr. Ripley's name off of there yet? Or does it only come off if you shoot the person? Like, what happens here? And it's just, it's too much.
I think it was definitely a confusing point.
It was a really beautiful, like, as I said, it was beautifully animated, like gorgeously animated. So I can understand why they wanted to do it. But at the same time, it was kind of like, you could just let her go and have the list only be part of what, Percy wants. Or have it show up earlier, as you said, and have Percy see it and have him do the, no, that's not right. I'm not dealing with this and I'm going to just ignore it.
Yeah, this is broken.
And be actively ignoring it until she actually betrays them, and then have him doing the, oh my God, like, well, I can't believe that actually happened.
Even if, I think there's an even simpler way of handling that and still keeping that beautiful scene that they have there. And just because he's got the gun in his hand, and if he's got the gun in his hand and it always makes this like shing, it starts, but it makes this little chiming noise before it starts writing. So you could have like a stone skittering, the gun in his hand, and that shing start, and then a stone skitter, and then him turn his head and see Cassandra running to the door. And then that, or like a stone, her running, then that shing, and him look down and being like, what the hell?
Shit.
And then there's at least the like, he now sees there's a danger and the gun's picking up on it and it's being written down. At that point, it was like, well, the gun told you that your sister is a danger when your back was turned to what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of confused me. But yeah, so there is this thing, and then Vax slides underneath. The Briarwoods arrive, and Cassandra does an info dump of why she's with the Briarwoods. You abandoned me. They're here for me. They're always going to be my family and all this other stuff. That did bring the question. And she's like, I am a Briarwood. And that brings up the question to me of my brain was really playing around with of when she gets her throat slit by Professor Anders. Did they cut across the front because he knew she wouldn't die? And there was a chance for them to get saved? Or that it doesn't matter if she was dead because they were going to turn into a vampire? Or maybe she is a vampire. I don't know, like what that whole thing is, because she's been spending so much time. We don't know what they've done to her. But the other thing too is, then I was like, or is that, so there was a hope that she was going to be saved. And if that's not the case, if she's effectively their pet, what the hell is Anders doing going slicing the throat of their pet?
Yeah, I get a little pissed if people start messing with my pets. So I don't know what, if that was just him doing the, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. And I'm going to take you guys down and then I'm going to leave. But it seemed weird because he seemed very happy with being, you know, having them as patrons.
Yeah.
That it does make it feel a lot more odd of the, well, if they were on the same team, like, yeah, was it a complete setup that she knew he was going to cut her throat and that she was just, they were hoping that Vox Machina was going to save her like good guys tend to do.
Or just antagonize the situation worse. Like, really piss off Percy to drive them further. Like, so he's not going to get that moment of like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know what that was.
It's also shown, though, that Briarwoods really don't care about their charges. Like, anyone that's working for them is disposable. So even though it's Cassandra, there may still be a thing of like, well, I guess someone else, doesn't matter if she dies. So this could have been like, how dare you do that to one of my pets? But for them, it could have been like, whatever. Yeah, another body. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So
that could have been a thing. But then Vex does the let my brother go, and Silas says, we'll take good care of him. And
I do have one point with Vex and Vax. Vex, and it's bothered me for most of the series, honestly. She has very incestuous vibes about her brother, and it's a little creepy. Because there are definitely moments where it feels very Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister moments. I'm doing a lot of Game of Thrones references for some reason today, but that's what I have in my notes, is just like, she feels very Cersei-ish with the, I want my brother, and he's only mine, and I only trust you, and all of these things. And it's just like, please go fuck someone else. Literally anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone else. Let your brother have some space. Please. I get you're twins, but you don't need to be that on top of him all the time.
See, I picked up on that vibe
the fuck off.
I put it down more as they've been through some stuff that we don't know, and that's one of those things of like, this is the only person in the world I can trust. So, but yeah, there is a very
it's
deeper connection
it's a little off.
into that. It's a little bit deeper. But there's another issue with this too. There's a really big thing because again, it comes down to the magic system in this. Yeah, I don't understand. Bring us up to speed. They go down. They're in this thing. There's this pit with this giant needle thing coming down. Cassandra runs off. Vax slides under the door, tells Percy to stop his sister from taking the piss, gets hypnotized by the Briarwoods, or by Silas, and is just standing there at Silas's side. And then as they're about to leave, Silas says, "We'll take good care of him," looks at Vax and says, "Be a lamb, won't you?" And then Vax looks over, hits a button, and starts the acid trap, and all this stuff goes down. How in the hell did he know what to do?
Yeah.
How did he know the button was there? What did he know the button would do? What was, like, how, you can't just say, unless his mind powers, he can actively function and get in and put his fingers into someone's brain and tell them, like mind link with them and let them know what's happening. Yeah. How is that? Like, yeah, it was a cool scene, like, be a lamb, because there's also this whole thing, like, is he going to be sacrificed? Because a lamb slaughtered all the stuff. But to me, I was just like, how, if you were to walk up to me and be like, be a lamb, I'd be like, oh, okay, where's the button for me to push? Like, I don't, like,
yeah, you tell me be a lamb, and I'm just like, I'll be really chill and laid back and just follow your every lead because, okay, you must be my shepherd. Like, it's not a, oh shit, where's a button? I gotta press a button.
And not even that, just be like, oh, okay, this. And it's like, he knew exactly what it was. So that was kind of like, just again, made me question the whole, what the magic system is so inconsistent. Does. Like, what can he do? How does this kind of thing get controlled? But again, very impactful. And again, so this is a really good example, chat, of if you're watching it for the enjoyment of watching it, not breaking it down like two writerly jerks like we are, then you're not going to notice this. You're just be like, oh, okay, that was a really cool scene because it was beautifully, like, this episode was beautifully animated. But when you really dig into the storyline and rip things apart, then it's like, well, we talked about speed bumps, so these are speed bumps.
Yeah.
Right? Then you go through.
And it is a world building issue, you know, and that is, it's one of the reasons why I love having some kind of like a book Bible or something, just so that I can create my magic systems and work through them. So I know why they exist, how they exist, and how they work and where the limitations are, so that you don't end up having these moments of oh man, this would be cool, we're going to do it, and have it break your whole system, because you don't want people doing what we're doing and sitting there being like, but this doesn't make sense. How did that happen? How does it work like that? Yeah. So if you can avoid that by putting in just that little bit of extra work, hugely helpful. And by a little bit of extra work, sometimes it's a lot of extra work, but it's so worth it.
And it just creates that depth and that, like, you can walk up to your knees in a wading pool, or you can dive into an ocean and submerge yourself. And that's what the reader wants, the viewer wants to be able to dive in and just, you know, look for the occasional shark, but not have to worry about that. But we did talk about it when you're doing something. Previously we've said, if you're doing something really tropey or something that you know is breaking a rule or something like that, to call it out is the best way often to do it. If you're going to do an info dump, call it out as an info dump. And that's what I found, is when this whole thing starts and the acid starts pouring down. That was one moment that I absolutely loved Pike in this episode, where she's like, an acid trap, real fucking original.
Yes.
That's calling it out. Like, that's what we're, yeah, okay, of course this could be an acid trap. Like, oh, these pipes run through acid. Oh, it's a trap? Oh, an acid trap. Oh, okay. So they did something that was silly and obvious, and they called it out as silly and obvious, and props for that. That was fantastically done. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate it again that they all just look over at Vex. And it's like, you have a plan, right? And it's like, no, she doesn't.
Well, because Percy's broken. Percy is the de facto leader right now, and he's just broken again, which I found the breaking of Percy was a little bit too extreme for that. Like, I think it was a little bit over. Like, they made Cassandra so much of a driving force for him, and that really bothered me in this moment, because his thing, as far as he knew, Cassandra was dead. He was going back to Whitestone to, as Scanlan would say, to fuck shit up and take his castle back and kill the Briarwoods and be back on top of things and destroy everyone that murdered his family and take back Whitestone and do his thing. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, my sister's alive, and that derails everything. And his only focal point is his sister and killing the people that murdered his family. And his sister really rose above to the top over killing everyone else, because he would make stupid decisions and not do things or do certain things. and was blinded just because his sister was there. And maybe that was something the Briarwoods were relying on for this. But it was a thing where, again, like, to have him that broken for this, it's like one person just derailed his entire revenge scheme and derailed whatever the smoky thing is that's riding along with him.
Yeah. And that was the thing, is like, I found it to be okay, yes, she's enthralled though, because you see they did a beautiful job of very, very briefly showing her eyes flicker gold.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know she's under Silas's thrall. You know that he's done this. And for Percy to just give up and be like, it doesn't matter anymore, my sister has betrayed me, doesn't make sense when he's so angry right now that it would be how dare they take her from me.
Yeah.
And I expected him to go angry, not go limp noodle. And seeing him go limp noodle was very much like, dude, come on, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Go fuck some shit up.
Let's do this.
Go.
Well, that, and the other thing too is Vax slides under the door, and Silas entrances Vax. Well, he's already entranced Vax, and it didn't work. He entranced him for like 5 minutes, and bit him on the neck, and that neck bite was enough pain to snap him out of it, enough to jump out of a window. And so why would that be the person they're like, oh, I mean, obviously he's the only one that ran through. Yeah. But, like, did he have to use a higher level to keep him enthralled? Would you not just be like, yeah, I tried this before, I'm just going to kill you?
Yeah, especially when it's like, they didn't need him.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need him. Like, with what Delilah says at the very end, you know, which we'll get to, but it is very much, like, it doesn't seem like you need this person, so why not just kill them? And that is the recurring theme of you didn't need Dr. Ripley anymore. Why didn't you kill her? You don't need Vax. Why didn't you kill him?
Like, if they were headed to the ziggurat, then they would have, and if they wanted that, then they would have taken Ripley. So Ripley was not in jail for that purpose.
Yeah.
She was just in jail for another purpose. So that potential explanation we've just defeated the show just defeated itself, and we pulled it out.
Yeah.
But then we have Scanlan doing they try to break the glass, obviously it doesn't work. And this is something that bothered me as well, which I was saying that I really hope they don't do. And they did, which is Keyleth was going so well in her growth, in her character arc. Like, of all the characters, Keyleth has the best character arc. The best growth, the appropriate pace, the appropriate slide backs, the appropriate step backs, all this stuff. And this one wasn't entirely off, but I think it was a little bit where I was like, she went back to I'm going to save the day, wraps everything up in the vines, and then what she does goes sideways and destroys everything. And that could have been a roll of the dice. But that also was kind of like, okay, that was a pretty major slip back.
Yeah, well, and it just seemed like it was you've seen the acid decay a mouse, or a rat. Like, it has eaten its way through this. And you're gonna you're gonna seal the hose that is spouting all of this acid with roots, with plants. This does not work. That might delay it, but there should have been no surprises that it's going to go sideways. Like, you've got 10 seconds of extra time now. Make a good use of it. But it's how did any of you think that this was actually going to buy you enough time to do anything?
That's it.
Also, the acid touches Percy's shoes, and he does not have, like, the Hobbit feet sticking out for the rest of the episode, and that is highly disappointing.
Or react at all. Like, that was the thing too. Like, your toes are getting eaten by acid and there's no reaction at all. But I don't know, I just found with this, like, I understand, and for a good character arc, there needs to be some falling back into old beliefs, and there needs to be some growing and sliding back and going back and forth. That's what growth is. That's how it works. So this is a flashback to the way that she was before, but it was a pretty big step back, I found, for doing something and having it go completely sideways the way she didn't intend. That was very much back to the dragon with the lightning, and then lighting the sun on fire. And then that just made me kind of really hit me with a thing in my chest of, like, I hope they don't backtrack her any further and make her back into this frightened, nervous,
bumbling,
thing.
anxious cuddle.
Yeah. So we're gonna see if that plays out, how that plays out down the road. But for me, I was just kind of like, that's not giving me a good feeling for what you're setting up down the road.
No.
But then Grog saves Percy by pulling him up onto
on
Scanlan's hand, and Vax slaps the living crap out of him.
Yep.
And then they realize they have to get up. Like, I love the line. She's like, "We're here. Save us. We're not going to abandon you." And then
she does have some great speeches, just in general. When she has to motivate someone, she's excellent, especially with Percy, of actually getting him motivated to do things. So, like, go fuck Percy when all of this is over, and just leave your brother alone for 10 minutes.
See, that's what, but that made sense. This whole scene made sense. What we talked about with Billy last time is that whole scene where she slaps Scanlan, the last episode, like, did not fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a hyper reaction, didn't whatever. It just, we've already gone over that, but it was just, this slapping makes sense. And then I love the fact that Scanlan goes into heavy metal.
It was great. And it was like, one, it was really punny. And two, it was just it felt, because the scoring was just so in your face there and so not medieval fantasy, that it did throw me a little bit out of it. And it was very much like a fourth wall break, but
it made me want to listen to Manowar.
That's fair. I have been on a Sabaton kick, so
I have to check out.
March of the Dead Men would have fit perfectly through this.
But yeah, for any of you who don't know, Manowar is a heavy metal group that does all Dungeons and Dragons fantasy themed music songs. And it's fantastic if you're into that stuff. Now this is where I do have another bit of an issue. I love the fact that we do see Pike, because they realize Percy really quickly snaps out of it, sees the panel, and Pike dives off of Grog's shoulder, jumps up, and starts looking at the panel. And I thought it was kind of cool that Percy does the same thing. And then Grog does, it's very brief. There's just a flicker of Grog kind of being like, hey, because Percy launches off of him and he's not expecting it. So I thought that was really cool and really well done. But then the thing that bothered me is they're up there and he's like, there's two switches. Like, it looks like they need to be pulled in unison. And he's like, I think there might need to be a third switch or something pulled. And then Ripley is like, yes, the third switch. I thought you had nothing to do with this room. I thought this was all Professor Anders that was building this room. How do you know there's a third switch, and how do you know they need to be all pulled in unison?
Yeah.
So either you're lying and trying to save your ass, or there's some miswriting. I lean it more towards actually pretty good writing of them, like, just dropping really subtle nuggets of, like,
she knows
really
more than
shouldn't be
she's
trusting
been saying.
what she's saying, because she's all like, she's counteracting herself or contradicting herself multiple times. Yeah. So I think that's more like good writing in that sense, but it could also just be an oversight like that. You know.
It could be, and what bothered me more about the scene was that they were all like hanging off the levers, and they didn't. Like, the levers didn't get pulled. And I was like, okay, so that kind of works. It must be a very sticky, lever that it takes a lot of effort to pull it. But then when, Pike is hanging off of Percy trying to heal Grog, and Dr. Ripley jumps and grabs the lever with her good hand, she's somehow also able to pull it. She only has one hand.
Yeah.
And stumps, they're not really hugely useful for, like pushing against things, because there's nothing protecting the end of the bone. So it's excruciating if she was using that for leverage. And it's just really just kind of overlooked. It's just, of course they can pull the lever with no counterbalance or any of those kinds of things, that it's like, no, you really need leverage.
Yeah.
And you don't have it.
Well, the other part that I had with this that bothered me is they dive into the pool. Grog strips naked, which is awesome, dives into the pool. Yeah. And Pike is healing him. That was kind of a really smart thing, like to have Pike constantly kind of healing him. But then
Yeah.
again, it's like, how powerful has Pike become?
It's
To heal him
insane.
incessantly while he's swimming through extremely powerful acid. But the problem with that too is he's down there fumbling around, opening the thing, doing stuff, and all of a sudden Percy's like, 1, 2, 3, now! And they all pull the levers, because all three pull at the same time. How the hell
Yeah.
did Grog hear?
Yeah, he
He's
shouldn't have
under
been
like
able
11
to.
feet of acid. How did he hear Percy say now?
Half giants must just have really good hearing. So Green Giant and chat can let us know about that one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Unless Percy was looking down and saw Grog ready. But again, like,
yeah,
there's that, again, very subtle, getting really pedantic on this. Like, that is such a small, little nuanced detail. But for me, I was just like, okay, well.
it's like how are you gonna hear that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I cannot stand, like, Pike as a character is very sweet. I love the dynamic between her and Grog. I absolutely loathe her magic because she is doing astral projection, which that has to be difficult to do, and she says that it's difficult. She's keeping the enchantment on everybody's glow sticks, and now she's doing this constant healing. So she's got 3 major things all going at once. And everything's fine. Like, you don't see her flicker. You don't see any of this being like a real actual strain of any kind. And it's just so, it's just God mode has been activated. And there's literally no consequences at this point because it's the, okay, well, Pike will just fix it. Like, at this point, it just feels like, no, just send Pike to go to the ziggurat. She'll just sunbeam things to shit. Like, she's... It does not work for me, and it's really ruining things for me.
Well, and that's the thing that I've talked about before, and on this and in other things, that creating a god character is extremely problematic because when you've got a god character, you don't speed bump your readers or viewers out of the story. You throw them out of the story because there's zero reason to care anymore. Because so long as this character is around, nothing matters. No one is going to die. No one is going to get hurt. No one is going to be put in any great risk or peril, and no matter how many swarms of zombies are going to be coming at you, nothing matters. And that was my thing too, is that Whitestone is a pretty small place. And assuming when this is set, back in medieval ages and stuff like that, there's not a ton of, like, we don't have the population centers we had now.
Yeah.
How were there so many zombies in the waves? They bring up the dead of like 16 counties across to come in for this.
Right.
Like, how many people have died in Whitestone over the years?
Yeah. How fast are they breeding or bringing them in? Like, people don't breed that quickly.
Yeah, like there was just wave after wave after wave of these things. Like, there was just, that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me. Again, a little small thing, but I was like, seriously, how many people are dead? Because they've been attacked by like 10,000 zombies.
Yeah.
If not more.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. But then the acid drains away. Grog is healed. We have this awesome scene with Grog and Pike showing exactly how close they are when she checks on his Captain Winky.
Yeah. I love that he doesn't even look. It's just her doing the, are you okay? And he's just like, I don't know. Is Captain Winky still there? And it's like, of course you're going to make her look to tell you whether or not your penis is there. But
to be fair, it is at eye height. At eye level.
Yeah, that is true. She doesn't really have to do much to be able to say, yes, it's there.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that brings up, we've missed it. I know we're almost at the end, so we're just going to dive in really quickly here to the D&D dad joke of...
Oh, God. I was hoping we'd miss it this time. Oh...
Why did the gnome get thrown out of the tavern?
I have some really non-pun answers for this related to Grog's penis now, apparently. But go on, I suppose.
Because when it came time to pay the tab, they were a little short.
Yeah, no. No. It's just no.
So anyway.
Where's the, like, I need a button that'll just,
womp,
womp, womp. Yeah. Every time there's a pun.
So Grog is healed, Captain Winky is okay, and they head off. Or then we go, but we actually see the ziggurat for the first time. Yep. And we hear Delilah make the comment of, we are spoiled for choice when it comes to blood sacrifices.
Yeah. It's always good to have backup.
Yes.
Just in case one doesn't work.
But again, why wouldn't
So,
you bring Dr. Ripley then?
yeah, or just you have a town full of people. Just snipe a couple of them.
Yeah.
You already did that once to hang people on the tree. Like, yeah.
So many things. But they did do a great job this episode of tying up some loose ends, pulling things together. It was probably one of the more beautifully animated episodes, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think they did a fantastic
it's gorgeous.
animation on this one.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. And it's very good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. For the most part, like, I know there are a lot of gripes, but for the most part, again, this show is one that I've enjoyed watching. And if I only went through and watched it once, I would get a lot of just pure enjoyment out of it. It's a very light, easy show with a lot of gore, and there's, really interesting villains. And that all makes me happy. So, like, I'm definitely still enjoying it. But as far as if you're looking to learn about story writing, whether it's for, screenplays or books or anything like that, storytelling is storytelling.
Yeah.
And things that are good are universal when it comes to, like, our Western culture storytelling and whatnot. Even it does pass through for different types of storytelling too in different areas of the world. You can learn a lot by dissecting these kinds of things. And so I definitely, you can learn good things, you can learn what to avoid. And it's really important to have that critical eye on things when you're trying to learn to do better with your craft, as, like, we always should be. Because writing is always a learning process, and you should never stop learning. So we're learning at the expense of Critical Role.
But that's the
so
thing.
Thank you to Critical Role.
I'm definitely going to sit back and watch this again. Like, once it's all over and done with, I'm going to turn off my critical writer brain and just watch the whole series from start to finish, just for enjoyment, because it is, like Giant, it is a fantastic series. It's delightful. It's a lot of fun. I learned something new today when I was rewatching the episode. I made a reference in the past to Heavy Metal, which is a comic book series way back when, and they also made a couple of movies from them. Heavy Metal 2000 is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, well, there you go.
So if you're interested in seeing a lot of nudity, a lot of sex, a lot of over-the-top blood violence and gore and crazy storytelling, Heavy Metal 2000 is there. It's like Vox Machina on steroids to the extreme.
Yeah. I'm just excited for when The Boys season 3 comes out. Yeah. That is something, again, another one that everyone should watch.
Yeah, those are great ones. So just to wrap this up, do we have any final thoughts on this episode?
I don't think so. I think that we pretty well covered it. There was some really high points. There's some really low points. I am excited for the next episode, and I hope that they get their magical shit together.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I'm really excited for the next episodes. Like, the last episode 6, I was concerned. Episode 7, I was really concerned. Episode 8, I was excited because I was actually, okay, they're turning the page, and they did turn the page. There were some missteps, but they turned the page and they really picked up their game again. And it's looking back like it was the first 6 episodes. And
my favorite part, though, is still episode 9, when you get to actually see, Silas die and everything Delilah does to get him back, because I love getting to see villains that are actually in love and have relationships and
Spoiler
have
alert, by the way.
What? That's episode 9. We've already watched that. When he's turned into a vampire.
Oh, when he's dying.
Yeah, because I think he dies in that.
Die entirely?
I'm
close to
somewhat certain of that. Yeah. But either way, he's deathly ill or he dies, and that's when you get the whispered one coming in and turning him into a vampire. And I love that in villains, when you get to see that tenacity, and especially when you're allowed to see it in a woman instead of her just being like, oh, boo-hoo, my husband died. Yeah. So, but I've been informed I'm not allowed to do that if my husband dies. I've been informed not allowed to go collecting magical books and summoning terrifying gods and turning him into a monster just to have him back.
See, I don't know if I would put that caveat down. I think that's...
See, yeah,
but I'm also a villain person, so I've always,
and
my favorite characters have been the anti-heroes or the villains. So
and he's a good guy. He cheers on the good guys. So I don't understand it, but I suppose I'm gonna have to respect it.
yeah.
Maybe.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a really pissed off, powerful creature.
Yeah, and that's not
Yeah.
ideal.
Something really cool. So yeah, I think we have wrapped up this episode pretty well. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of After the Roll, Legend of Vox Machina. This was season 1, episode 10, The Depths of Deceit. Thank you very much, LJ, for chatting about this. I know there's a few things we're going to chat about afterwards, but this is the end of After the Roll. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.
Yeah, in a week.
Yes,
Hopefully.
in a week, most definitely.